Welcome back to Restless, and I'm ready to rest, take a nap, or something like that. Lauren brought some really good cookies, and so I'm having a sugar crash.
Really?
I think I need another cookie.
Did we brew some coffee? There's a coffee maker.
There is a coffee maker.
Currently
I don't
disassembled.
I actually don't drink coffee.
That's a
Me
shame.
either.
It is a shame.
I love coffee. I drink decaf because I love coffee so much.
Do you really?
Yeah.
I mean, I'll do it every now and then, but it's not like.
It's so bitter and
And
terrible.
I just spent the last 2 weeks in Europe, and oh man, their coffee is so much better than our coffee.
Really?
Yeah.
Do you have like the tiny little ones, the espressos, or?
Oh, all types of stuff. Well, in Switzerland, they do all different types of coffee.
Okay.
So they actually have something called coffee, which is like
What is that?
Which is like our drip coffee.
Okay.
But it's made under pressure, so it's made like espresso. It's just like a Lugero shot, like a long shot.
Okay.
Of espresso, but with a lighter roast bean.
Hmm.
So there's that.
So you're a connoisseur of coffee.
No. I just like it a lot.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. I mean, I use my Keurig brewer.
I mean, I have to say, I've never actually had an espresso in my life, nor have I had a cappuccino.
And you lived in Italy for a year.
No.
Neither have I.
I've drank a lot.
Never had a
lot
cup of
shots
coffee.
espresso.
Never. Have you had like the sweet coffee, like the stuff from Dunkin'
I
Donuts?
still don't like that.
No?
People will say to me to try it.
I do like that.
And I'll say it still tastes like bitter coffee.
I like it, but it's a girly drink, so.
I used to get when I was
have to not show
when I
people
was
I'm
in
drinking.
middle school. I used to get like an extra large Dunkin' Donuts iced coffee, extra light, extra sweet, which is like 4 sugars and like this,
Yeah,
like
tons of
4
calories.
ounces of cream, like heavy cream.
Yeah.
so good.
So good.
I haven't had one of those. Probably
So you've been
since
drinking
I was-
coffee since you were in middle school?
Not hot coffee. I didn't drink hot coffee until I started working actually.
Okay.
Because
I was about to make a short joke, but
So tired. No, I'm short. I'm short
coffee stunts your growth, from what I understand.
I'm short regardless of how much coffee I drink. I'm still taller than my father,
Oh, there you go.
who's taller than his father.
Excellent. So your son
Growing
will be
incrementally.
taller
One
than
inch
you.
taller than me. Yes.
Someday
Yes.
you'll be a race of giants.
Yep. So there's that.
Well, I think that's. Oh, go ahead.
I said there's that.
There is
No, we
that.
probably should move into our topic.
Well, actually, this is the segue, right? Because being restless and needing rest is one of the things that happens when you do a lot of ministry. Is that you get tired, right? From serving the church, serving the poor, serving others. And all 3 of us work a great deal in that. This is, by the way, Paul, Lauren, and I.
Hi.
And the 3 of us work in the church, right? I'm a priest, obviously. And Lauren runs a youth group, puts on dances, is on a young adult council,
Yes.
right? And anything else you do? You do a bunch.
I've-
You're starting a dating club? No, how do you? I'm
Dating
sorry.
club. That's an interesting concept.
How do you put that?
Me and all my single weirdo friends are doing a dating club, guys. No. So St. Cecilia's is working with Communio, a nonprofit to help parishes extend their reach into the community, and help improve relationships within the parish. Because we know that when a husband and wife stay together and they continue to bring their children to Mass on Sundays, there is a much greater likelihood that when those children grow up, they will also continue to go to Mass. So we want good marriages to help foster the church, right? And just, to help people, because divorce is terrible. So we're working with that nonprofit over there. And as part of this Building Healthy Relationships, they're about to launch a series for married couples and for singles. And they asked me to assess 2 dating series programs, which I did. It's kind of funny to me. I'm like, now I'm looking at dating courses, like just another thing
Yes.
that I'm doing for the church.
And you're running one.
Yeah, so I suspected I would be asked to run the course, and then I was. So I'm just facilitating.
Okay.
It's a video series.
Has it started yet?
It is starting next week.
Okay. So we're not sure how
So
many people
pray
are
for
gonna
me, y'all.
show up, but
And us. Right, exactly. And I've been talking to people about it, and I even said to 2, like, I can see the judgment on your faces. And then the person's like, oh, no. I mean, I just called them out on it. Like, yeah, it's okay that this sounds weird and you feel uncomfortable.
When I first heard about it, I thought it was weird.
Yeah, everyone will. That's natural. But if you
Yeah, but-
actually look at the description of what it is about, it's like helping lead people in their relationship discernment in a logical and biblical way to kind of assess warning signs and learn this partner to see, is this a potential for a long-term relationship, specifically marriage? And how do you do that?
sure.
How do we know how to do that? I don't know. For some people, I think it's probably easier than others, but it seems like the course is going to have good information.
It's so necessary. I actually just got a text a couple of days ago from a friend who sent me this article that the title of the article is The matchmaker priest helps 270 couples find love, and all of them got married.
Wow.
So apparently, a priest somewhere. I haven't read the whole article yet, but
Sounds like Father Andy circa 2016.
yeah. So
Never helped me out.
clearly, there's a real need.
Me neither.
Oh, man.
Me neither. I was not in that clique though. I was never invited into that. I think I was too short.
Could be. No.
Could be. See.
But I don't know. It's kind of funny that now that you're saying that, like, I actually think since I was a kid, I have been listening to girls talk about things about boys that they liked and stuff. And I could always kind of see things, I think, a little more clearly than they could because I'm more logically oriented than emotionally oriented. And a lot of people are. And there are just, I think, a lot of silly girls that do take all these signs with a guy like, this must mean this. It's like, it doesn't mean anything. If a guy likes you, he will ask you out on a date. It is that simple. If he stops talking to you, then he is not into you. It is so black and white with men, and women
Very
just
true.
make it more than it is, much grander because they're so hopeful.
Yeah, that's true. Although it's getting more and more rare for guys to ask girls out on dates. I don't know if they just have fear or if it's
It's
fear of
terrifying.
rejection.
It's always been terrifying.
Has it?
Yeah.
Because I have to be honest, the two relationships I had in high school, both of the times I made sure that the girl liked me first by asking like a third party.
That's
All right.
smart.
So yeah, but you still okay? Well, fine. That you had a fear that you
definitely,
you then found just like you solved that problem.
I did. I had a sister who was like, "Hey, Kathy, go tell me if
Yeah, there you
Jessica
go.
likes me."
Yeah.
But even
So
if
there you go.
things should start, I think, ideally, in a friend group, right? And then you start to talk to that person a little bit more one-on-one, and maybe you compliment them and you just see, is she smiling when I give her a compliment? Yes, great. That's a good sign. Is she responding to me in what I'm saying? Great. That's a good sign.
She hasn't yet slapped me. Yeah, that's a. Sorry, my
I
bar's
think
pretty
it's
low. I guess.
pretty obvious, kind of.
Yeah.
I think women make it pretty obvious. Like,
Okay.
yes, I'm responding to you in a positive way. You can ask me out.
Should we go from ministry to dating
Relationships.
episode part 2 or part 3 or part 4?
I think we're
yeah,
overdue for another dating episode.
We are overdue.
Yeah.
I'm
so
down, guys. I'm down.
that'll be in a future.
So far, this
future
is
episode.
our second tangent.
Yes.
Plug to Father
Speaking
Sam
of
and
tangents.
Matt Sferrazza's show, The Tangent on Veritas Catholic Radio.
Yes, if you've not heard the tangent, save yourself. I mean, you should definitely go listen.
It's excellent.
It is
Long form. It's long form.
It is very good. Yeah.
Yeah.
And they interview great people.
Yes.
Well, I can segue us. So, Father Joseph is bringing up something that I am doing, and I'm very fortunate that I have a friendship with a priest here in Stanford who has a great hall, Father Suarez, and he is always looking to do events. He really believes in community and bringing people together, and he's so giving. So he loves to plan and, talk about the menu and food and prepare food and starting to cook because now he has a new commercial kitchen and he does all the decor in his hall and, he does a fantastic job. And through our relationship actually in youth group, because we see each other every Friday night, we just started talking because he wanted to throw a party. And so, of course, I responded because I have a background in events. It's what I like to do and I'm organized and I'm good at it, So this is a talent, skills that I have, so I'm happy to give them. But it did kind of get to be a point where, it seems like, okay, this is going to be about this much amount of work, right? Whatever it is. And then it becomes so much more. And it always does. So I have felt weighed down and said, why am I doing all of this for the young adults, frankly? It's like a bitterness. I guess I'm willing to give to a certain point, or I put on this event and there's so much that goes into it. And then I'm getting frustrated with how people are treating me, how things are going, or it just never ends. It's like things that I think should happen and then they don't.
Right.
So it just weighs me down more and more. And
people that are givers and want to love and serve the Lord and the church often find that exhaustion in the middle of ministry, doing good things, but really just stretched. And even Paul, you're involved in a lot of different things. You used to run the-
I've taken a step back, so I kind of felt that. I also took a new job, and it's been kind of crazy. But I was involved with Crossroads for Christ, which is crossroadsforchrist.org, if you want to go find out more about it. But and we started the Stamford chapter. 3 of us started the Stamford chapter of C4C back in August or September of 2017, and so I was heavily involved with it for 5 years, and now I'm more of I call it an unofficial advisory position. I've stepped down, but But yeah, I mean, that was hard.
You used to volunteer at youth group as well?
Yeah, I did youth group. Well, I'm on a semester hiatus because I think I'm away every Friday this spring. So it's going to be particularly difficult to get to youth group if I'm not here, as it turns out.
You're also on the Diocesan Young Adult
Council?
Council?
Yeah, Young Adult Council with Lauren. We're on the council, and so we try to do party planning and coordinate things between the different diocesan groups. So that's been interesting. I think with ministry, I think it's always, there are ups and downs, especially in young adult ministry. It's kind of weird because people are transient. And so when I first got to Stanford, we had St. John's Flock, which was the young adult group at the Basilica of St. John. And that was then terminated. And it was a lull for a long time. And then when Father Andy came and he started to do Faith on Tap again, it started to rebuild. And then around 2018 it cratered again. It was low. Like there wasn't much going on.
Really?
Faith on Tap kind of emptied out a bit. And then it kind of revived itself.
Well, Diane started a group, the Catholic Adventures.
And that helped. That started to pull things out again. So that was really helpful. So I think, and it can get frustrating. So with C4C, we started out with 4 people, and then we grew to like 15, 20 every week, and then we went down to like 6. It was really shy.
How is it now?
Now it's like 15 to 20 every week.
Great.
Yeah.
Good.
Which is great. And so it goes in waves, and so it can be frustrating. I think that's the case with all ministry, but I think it's just perseverance and prayer. And you know that if you have 4 people at an event, like, great, wherever 2 are gathered in my name.
Yeah, but that's frustrating though.
It can be.
That's frustrating. As somebody who's done youth ministry for a very long time, when you get low turnouts, you kind of say, is it worth it? Because it's a ton of effort. Mm-hmm. It really is. And
yeah,
makes it harder to plan too.
Yeah.
Like,
what games do you do with 4 people?
Yeah, there's certain activities that require a group, and then we've had this happen, especially with the high school kid. Oh, and Paul just mentioned a game that I have brought to youth groups called WA. If you play Ultimate Frisbee, then you know what it is.
I don't.
It's just it's like a silly command game. I'll show you.
Please do.
We'll get the Cardinal Kung team to play it.
Okay.
Maybe it'll finally catch on with these Stanford Catholic kids.
I don't know.
But
there's a lot of resistance.
Yeah, because it requires you to be silly. But that's when kids like open up and have fun.
It's actually
we all want it.
When I recognized it's actually like a really cool group rhythm game, then I was all about it because I'm a drummer.
That is what it is. But
so when you're finding that kind of exhaustion from ministry, or like being burnt out or frustrated, like what do you do? Where do you turn? Just keep doing what you're doing, or
yeah, that's what I did. I don't know if it worked out. I mean, I think it worked out because we persevered and it still exists. So, but I think you have to have a good team too. I think you have to. It's a bit of it's humility also to recognize that one person probably can't do everything, and so building a group of confidants to work with you is really important. And also you have to realize that, I forget what the principle, it's got a formal name, but the 80-20 principle is very true. It's true in like nearly every aspect of the world, where 80% of the work is going to be done by 20% of the people, if not less.
I'll say it's like 95-5.
Yeah, and so
church.
And it's just like the 80% of the top best-selling books are written by 20% of the authors. It's this constant principle, and it's true, and you have to recognize that. And so if you're willing to take a step in, which Lauren has done in a big way, there is a realization that you're part of now the 20% that has to support the other 80%, and it's like, and that can be hard.
So how do you discern what to say no to, though? Because it's true, especially as the church gets smaller and as young adults get fewer and fewer, there's almost like more burdens placed on your shoulders. I mean, Paul was telling us earlier that he got invited to a reception for our bishop's appeal.
Yeah.
Because there's not a whole lot of young adults out there that are generous and give. And so he singled out like, hey, we've got one.
Yeah.
It's like,
no, there was a few.
Caught him in the fishnet.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that there's something to that. And it's the same thing in donations too. Actually, it's probably less, but in the church, really,
20% of people do 80% of the giving.
Yeah. It's probably even more swayed. But I think it's one of those things that you have to, if you're going to put in the effort. I think, you asked about saying no. I think you have to evaluate your status in life. And obviously, if you have a wife and kids or a husband and kids, like, you're going to be naturally more inclined to say no to things. Yeah. Some people are like power people and they just do everything and manage it, and it's crazy. And like, I'm not that way. I'm too type A, where everything has to be planned. So I can't deal with that degree of chaos.
Yeah.
But yeah, so there are people that can do that, and that's great. We need those people. And I think the rest, the other 80, and especially the church, the institution of the church, has to really support these people, the 20% that are putting in the work. And I think there's a little bit of a...
Yes, but I will say, priests are in the same boat, where it's
Yeah, you have
80,
to support the
80-20,
priest.
you know,
Yeah,
like-
yeah. And I think there's always this like, well, why don't you just do one more thing? You're already doing all this. Well, just do this. And it's like, and when you see somebody like really active, you're like, oh, that person can do it. They're really good at this stuff. Like,
Yeah.
give them more, give
But
them
that's
more, give
the
them
straw
more.
that
give 'em
broke the
more.
camel's back. It's like,
Yeah, yeah.
not
And you
one
have to
more
say
thing.
no, and then you say no.
Yeah.
And it's disappointing, but that's okay. People can be disappointed if you say no.
Yeah. Yeah, I've had to grapple with that. Lauren, do you struggle with that, saying no to good things?
Sure. I don't want to say no because for a while too, I was on a high. It's like I wasn't being asked to do anything. I kind of came into the community in February of 2017. I didn't know that it was a lull. That back then, to me, I was like gaining all these Catholic friends that I've never had in my life. And then for me, the turning point was after doing my first spiritual exercises in 2020. And coming back that June is when you asked me to be on Restless and the rest of the crew. And that was like the first thing. And I was like, I'm not Catholic enough for that. And I
Little did you
suggested
know.
other people for you to ask in my place. And then it was you saying, no, I want you to be on it. And I said, oh, okay. I in my heart, I know I desire to be on it. I'm just afraid. So I started doing it and it's been wonderful. And it just went from there, thing to thing to thing. So initially I was saying yes to everything because I felt like these are all good things for God and I'm serving the church. But there is, I think, a discernment that should happen. And spiritual direction certainly helps me. I said no to youth group initially because I thought I can't add another thing. It's impossible. And I didn't want to do it. And through direction, I was told, like, no, this would be very good for you because of my nature. To help me work on my patience, right?
Did the kids help you work on patience?
Well, yeah, because at the time I was coaching at Cardinal Kong basketball. And the way that I approach coaching is like discipline and kind of order.
Yeah.
And that's my nature. That's what I like. That's how I like to be coached. And I want to be on competitive, successful teams. So that's what works for me and in Ultimate. But that's not what worked for these kids. And it was like the first season of this team. And this happens all the time with kids. I've coached like 6th grade girls for years, but they don't listen to what you say, and they do get silly, and they start wrestling on the side when you're like trying to do a drill. And I don't want to show the children my frustration, but there's also that dynamic, like, well, I'm their coach, so I can discipline them, but it's a balancing act. And Antonia was clearly saying, like, no, you need to just kind of back off and just have fun with these kids. That is not what this is about, like this particular team. And she was right. And so I think she thought youth group for me would be a great way to grow in that. And I have a blast with the kids. I especially love middle school children. Like, I just delight in like the conversations we have. Like, I don't know. It's just great. Children are great. So I ended up saying no to one other thing, right? I was like, actually, no, I cannot. I did have to say no. I was like struck, actually, like I felt horrible that I was going to have to say no because I already agreed to it. And I talked to my friend, Father Andy, about it. Like, I was very concerned to have to say no. And the person was very understanding, and they appreciated that I realized I couldn't give it the time that it needed because it was way more than what we had talked about and anticipated. So, yeah, I don't know. There's always fear. And then you're reassured, right? But there is a discernment process. So now I'm aware of, like, what are the things I've committed to? And usually for me, if I'm asked to do something, I kind of know right away, like, oh, yeah, I want to do that. Like, we talked about intercessory prayer on a previous episode where I was invited to do that. And there was like this buildup that led up to it. So I knew I could say yes. And I'm going to go to the next meeting, and I expect that I'll do it again. But I'm also trying now to take a step back and, like, don't just respond right away. Give it a day, give it a couple days, actually go to prayer, just sit in adoration, ask Jesus, because we can't do everything. And if we do, that'll pull away from the things that we are already doing potentially. Mm-hmm. And the devil can win in that.
Yeah.
Like, Lauren's called to do this, youth ministry, but we're also going to ask her to help with the pro-life movement, which I really want to do. And I was invited to do, and I was praying at the Planned Parenthood. And that was another step of like getting outside of my comfort zone. But I don't know that is what God is calling me to right now.
Yeah.
I could be wrong, but I'm trying. I'm trying to follow. because we don't want to get to that burnt out place that you're talking about, that you mentioned, right, where you feel so weighed down, because then what'll happen, you abandon everything. And I really don't like that. I have felt like I've seen people leave things. I mean, not like I'm like I know everything or something, but I have thought like they shouldn't be leaving that.
Yeah.
It's kind of a cop out. Like persist, even though it's hard, or that it's
that's
uncomfortable or whatever.
That's one of the elements then to persist, is having that prayer life. And that's kind of the balance that we have to strike, is between the active ministry and the relationship with Christ, because that's where you get the source, the fount of the strength to go on.
I remember when we had a pretty big lull in C4C. It wasn't, I would say the lull probably was like 18. That was when it felt like the lull. Anyway, doesn't matter. We had this mission day for all the C4C leaders across the state. We're in New Britain, and we were all there. And we had this intercessory prayer, and I remember it was the four of us at the time, the servant team, and it was like us four plus like four other people, and that was all of C4C Stamford. And there was a real discussion of, is this chapter going to continue? And it was kind of scary. I mean, we put a lot of effort into this, and just to see it kind of disappear was kind of unacceptable. Like, we weren't going to let it happen. I remember the wife of the leader of C4C, so Santina Moran, she was saying, we had intercessory prayer groups, and she said, Lord, do your will in the Stamford chapter. Whatever it's supposed to happen, just let it happen, and let us accept that. And then things started to just turn around after that point.
Yeah.
It was, again, it's a humility. So I think going to prayer, and it's really important. And sometimes, and we also have really high expectations of ourselves. At least us type A people, we have very high expectations of ourselves. But like, if something's not perfect or whatever, you also have to realize that it could still be good and not be perfect.
Yeah.
And that's what C4C Stamford was for many years.
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head about having to like be detached somewhat from your ministry. Like, if we take too much of our identity from what we do for God, that's not really our identity. It's not what we do, but who we are. And that's something, as a priest, of course, being the priest is my identity. But, this ministry or that ministry, or, whether I'm good at preaching or confessions or spiritual direction, whatever it is, like that, even if I fail in one certain area, I can't take that as, an attack on my identity, which I think, when you pour yourself into something like C4C or youth group, and you kind of maybe wrestle with that, that if it fails, it's kind of like
I failed
as a person. Yeah. Or I failed for God. Like, I didn't give God what he deserves, or God doesn't.
Sometimes things just come to an end, right? We're sitting in the building of a former Catholic school.
And a present
that
Catholic
has
school.
Ended. Exactly.
Oh, it's changed.
Now,
it's changed hands.
It's actually
Yes.
It's the third iteration.
It is the third iteration of the school. Yeah.
Okay, so there you go, right? And we don't always understand it. Like, it may seem horrible if C4C were to end, but maybe there's something else that would be coming right around the corner. And we just don't know yet, or well, who knows?
That's something we as Catholics have got to come to grips with, the fact that, our institutions are not the church. Like, this parish or this school doesn't have to survive for our faith to survive, Because I know you're from Hartford, Paul, the Archdiocese of Hartford.
The Archdiocese of Hartford.
The Archdiocese of Hartford. Yes. And they had a significant parish closure situation a few years ago.
Now every town is one parish.
Yeah, and there used to be a bunch, right? I mean, in your town of Cheshire,
we had three.
You had three.
Well, one closed. They sold to a Coptic Orthodox church. It was kind of cool.
That's kind of cool, actually.
Yeah, it didn't just get. And then one of them
stayed in the family.
Yeah, kind of.
Separated brothers,
strange
but
family. Yeah. And then the other one is still, the other church still exists, but it was merged in with the main. I think they have like one mass a week or something. I don't even know why they keep the building. It's ugly as could be. But
well, I mean, when that happened, was there tears and wailing and gnashing of teeth?
No.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, I think when Epiphany closed and it was vacant for a long time, then they sold the building or they rented it out. I don't know how they did it, but there was a lot of backlash there because one big, huge, gigantic Irish Catholic family was the bedrock of that church, and then it had to close, and that was kind of sad.
Yeah.
We had already moved out of that church though to the big church, which still exists. So, but in Southington, Connecticut, which is just one town north of Cheshire where I grew up, they had 5 or 6 parishes, and they were all merged into one. And then New Haven had 13 that were all merged into one.
Oof.
Well, 13 original, and then it had been merged down to like 7 or something, and now it's 1.
Yeah. But
so sad.
None of that is
sad,
our faith, though. It's sad, but I mean,
well, the church is declining, sadly.
Yeah.
And I really don't like, when church buildings have to be sold or church property. Because I think it's very important that the Catholic Church, is this correct, has like the most property in the world. That
Probably.
we keep it. Because there are forces of good and evil, and the evil is coming. Like, we know that,
Very
the second
true.
coming. And I think the land that we have is actually very important.
I agree, but only to a point, because I think that sometimes our property holdings can get in the way of being a poor church that's flexible. Because I think the church is going to look very different in the future in 10, 15, 20 years. I mean, in the early church, it was house churches. It was communities that could pick up and move at a moment's notice. And we're not there yet, thankfully. We still have church buildings and everything, but the church is the people.
Yeah. But there is, I mean, I would say that a great ministry for the church is the beauty of the church. All the sculptors and the craftsmen and all that build our beautiful church buildings. Well, that used to build beautiful church buildings. It's hard to find one these days that was built in the past 100 years or maybe 70 years. That's beautiful, or what I would consider beautiful. Any case, so that there is a ministry there, and so I don't know. I think it's important. I'm kind of in the middle. I don't like the church things being closed, and we had 8 Catholic schools in Stanford that were all closed and merged, and it's sad, but. Yeah, I do see both sides, and I do. And like we always talk about, the church is in decline, which is true statistically, but also where the church isn't in decline, it's flourishing.
Yes.
So we always have to remember that. Like, Diocese of Bridgeport has lots of issues, whatever. The church is amazing here, and I think we forget that we live here. This is a very rare community we have in Diocese of Bridgeport.
It is,
and it's and then you have places like Steubenville and areas around Wichita, Kansas, and then and
most of the third world.
Yeah, and then I'm thinking very much like the Western world.
Yeah,
we have these areas that actually are flourishing, and if we have to support those and then make new areas that are flourishing. So we have to remember that it's not just all bad.
Well, that's almost Benedict option.
A little bit.
If you've read that book,
I have.
It's he makes the point that as Rod Dreher, great book. I really love it.
Yeah,
and it talks about how when the Roman Empire was falling to pieces, St. Benedict knew he could not change the culture at large. It was just too much. It was too much on a decline. So instead of changing the culture, he formed his own subculture of forming a monastery. It's kind of a small, enclosed place to continue learning and culture and art and all of that. And so when everything fell to pieces, people could turn to the monasteries for support and security and keep the faith alive. And so and I believe we're way too far gone as a culture to ever recover like the general American culture. We can't get back to 1950. It's just not going to happen, right? I mean, so we form these pockets, right?
Yeah.
These solid.
Do you think it's a positive thing?
What?
The formation of Benedict option communities, which is happening.
Yeah.
Slowly. Is that a positive thing for society at large, though? Because the more we take ourselves out of society, right, the more we minister to our people, our current people, talk about ministry, and less to being evangelical ministries, the less that there's evangelical ministry.
I don't know that that's the case, though, because
I don't know. Maybe
I think a Benedict option community like the school here at Cardinal Kong Academy or like C4C is open to the wider community, right? So if there was somebody that had the hunger of being a young adult Catholic who wants to find Christ, well, there's an option there.
Yeah.
The issue is that so many of our Catholic institutions have become indistinguishable from the culture. They're not truly Catholic, right?
I would actually. So I don't think what you said before in terms of ministry is exactly right. I think there's some. So I do think that, especially with things like the abortion issue, with what's going on with the transgender stuff, we don't have to get into it. I think that the church, and not necessarily the institution of the church, but the people within the church, the Catholic Church in particular, but also other Christian denominations especially, have been a huge force for good and change in those particular regards, have been the voice crying out in the wilderness, so to speak, for those particular issues. And I do think that there has been movement there. There has been hearts and minds changed on that. So,
well, yeah,
and that's coming from, to your prior point, that's coming from these really strong Benedict option communities. So, like when you say that the culture is gone, I'm too optimistic to think that it's completely gone. I still think we can change hearts and minds.
Yes, but on an individual basis, not on a grand scale. Like, I don't foresee
anything's possible with God.
Anything is possible with God, but I don't see the transgender movement or the LGBT movement being moved back
Or
to where it was
sexual
before.
revolution.
Right. Sexual
Casual
revolution
sex
is not going to go
culture.
away.
Now that
And
it's so blatant, it's just
I'm
more and more
optimistic.
blatant.
I don't know. I think there's
On TV, on YouTube, music videos, award shows, like the
Yeah, did you
the
see
way
the
women
Grammys?
are
But
dressed.
I look at the trends of not even Gen Z, it's whatever Gen Alpha I think they're calling it, whatever the generation comes after Z, and they've become like the result of the sexual revolution, kind of the opposite of it. Like they're the good part. Like they're there, so that means they're not part of this, like as part of the sexual revolution. And you can see the trends on what's happening with these kids and what they're exposed to and what they're rejecting.
Some.
It's more than the prior generations, which is good.
Yes.
So we don't know.
Well,
Be optimistic.
because I
There's
think
a hope. There is a hope.
There's always a deep desire in every human heart to rebel
And maybe
a little
like
bit, you know.
if,
That's
we
fine.
pulled back on the phones, that also I think is
Hold back on
hugely
the
important.
phones. Well, that's the key.
Because now kids,
Yeah.
who get phones in middle school and high school,
Yeah,
it's
or
too
like
young.
second grade.
Yeah, it's way too young, and then they're on social media sites and they can access pornography,
Yeah, it's
which
terrible.
is frightening, right? And it's happening,
Yeah. I don't know.
I'm hopeful.
and being influenced by
You are hopeful.
weird.
I am. I mean,
People-
the symbol for hope is an anchor, right? Like if you go into a church and you see an anchor, think hope.
Right.
And so, because you have to be anchored in that. Like if we don't have hope, we don't have much.
Yeah.
It's not blind hope.
No, it's not blind hope. And I just think that, our hope is that Christ is going to come again to set things right.
Yeah,
I don't know that our efforts can do it. That's where
No, but
that's
we
where
have to. We
disagree.
have to work. We have to do God's work, though.
We do.
On earth. And
We
so,
do
like,
because of each individual soul, not because of the culture at large. Like I teach confirmation class not expecting that 65 kids are going to come to Christ. I do it for that one kid
That's fine.
who's there, who
Yeah.
comes to Christ, And sometimes it's all you got.
Yeah.
But the other 64, are going to head down a tough path that's away from the Lord. Sometimes, I mean, God's grace works in mysterious ways, and they'll come back or whatever.
Yeah.
Who knows? But
yeah. But I do think the culture is important. I don't think we should disregard the culture.
and different people have different callings. Some people are called to engage the culture, engage politics, engage journalism, and all these things, and the arts.
Yeah.
no matter what you do or what your ministries are, it is very important to maintain a prayer life.
That's the key.
That is absolutely the key. So if you're saying, I don't have time for prayer because I'm too busy with all these things that I'm doing, you've got it wrong.
Right. You know what St.
Straight up.
Francis de Sales said? He said, every Christian should do a half an hour of meditation every day unless you're busy, and then you should do a full hour.
There you go.
Yeah. Well, that's like the biggest gift that a pastor can give to his parishioners is to take a day off or something like that.
Yeah, and to take a retreat, especially to
Yeah,
reconnect
retreat,
with
yeah.
Christ.
Yeah.
That's the biggest thing.
Yeah, if we don't maintain that relationship, most of us, I think, will probably just become lost. It's so important
Yeah.
to keep that as a foundation because he's living in us, he's working through us. So if we abandon that, he is not able to do that to the same way, and then we will not be able to give and serve in the same way. There will be a decline in our ministries.
And it's not your words that bring a young person to Christ. It's not your efforts that bring someone else to God. It's God who does it.
And that requires humility.
Yeah.
We like to think we're awesome and like, look what I did.
Yeah.
And it's not.
No, we're just a channel.
Yes.
A pencil in the hand of God, said Mother Teresa. We have to be in the hand of God.
Yeah. Look what we did. We just recorded a podcast. Aren't we awesome?
I hope this is in the hands of God. And thank you for bringing this to a conclusion because we do have to sign off at this time. But thank you so much for joining us on this episode of Restless. You can find us on 1350 AM and 103.9 FM. And join us wherever you find your podcasts. God bless and see you next time.